Amen. Y'all give them a hand. I don't know about you, but I'm excited about what's coming next in our service. And it's just been a great time. I just want to take a real quick moment and say a few words from my wife and I. A huge thank you to every one of you students and leaders that made our trip this past weekend possible. If you're not aware, and for my birthday, many of you gave and donated so that we could go to an Arkansas game. And well, let's just say the experience was great. The outcome was, we wish it would have been a little different, but it was a great weekend. We got to spend some time together, and we're back here tonight just ready to lift up the name of the Lord. But tonight we do have a special treat for you, and I just feel that this young man that's going to be bringing the word tonight, PJ, he's just always had a heart to serve and to be in the church. Many times, I'm just going to be honest, many times people graduate and they leave, and we don't see them no more. But PJ, there's a desire for ministry. There's a desire for more in his life. And tonight, I believe as he shares the word, you're going to hear that. And I'm just believing that God's going to touch your life. So I'm going to ask you at this time, if you put your hands together as we welcome PJ to the stage to bring the word tonight. We'll give him just a moment. He's I've never had the opportunity to play piano and preach, but my man PJ, that came from Miss Robin that can't sing. So I'm just going to be over here, and I love you, buddy. I know you're going to do an awesome job.
Well, how's everybody doing tonight? How was that game? It was cold, huh? My toes about froze off, but I got the winning points, so that's all that matters. I'm kidding. You guys did awesome, hipster team. Can I hear something? That's what I'm talking about. All right, so tonight, let me get to where I'm going here. I'm sorry. How was everybody's week? That's great. That's awesome. Mine was pretty good, the usual. How's school going for everybody? I know everybody loves school, right? Everybody loves it. I hated it when I was in school, but enjoy it while you can. No bills. No job. No nothing. You know what? I think they have the verses anyways, so it doesn't matter. All right. So tonight it's kind of fitting that I played I Surrender, because how many of you guys, you go through life, and you have struggles, right? You're always going to have, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are, you've had a struggle in your life at some point. Am I right? Is there anybody in this room that has not had like a rough patch or like something go wrong in their life? Raise your hand if you have. All right. So I was right. Sweet. Okay. So we have these problems. Let's say, I'll give you some examples. So you're in school, right? You're going, and there's this one class. You got like A's and B's in all your classes, but there's this one class that's like you cannot do like good in this class. You study as hard as you can, and like you study for like 6 hours a night. You don't go to sleep till 2 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up and you go to school. You have a test and you fail every single test, every single quiz. So then your parents get mad at you. So they ground you. So they take away your phone. They take away your laptop, which I don't know how you're gonna study without your laptop. But they take away your laptop. They take away your TV, and then you're just having a rough time in your life. You have nothing to do except study. So let me ask you guys a question. If that happened to you guys, what would y'all do? Anybody can answer. You cry? Okay. That's a good one. Ask the teacher for help. Okay, that's a good one. There's a particular answer that I'm looking for. Yes. Prayer. Some of us, we're going through a rough time. We try to fix it ourselves, right? But the thing is, God, He knows everything, right? And He has strength over everything, right? So why wouldn't we give the problem that we're having to God, right? So it makes perfect sense to me. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the story of David and King Saul. It's in 1 Samuel, if y'all want to read it when you go home. The story that I'm going to be talking about is from 1 Samuel 13 to 1 Samuel 31, but I'm going to kind of like condense it so you guys like narrate it so you guys can understand what's happening. And there's a couple prayers that that David prays in this time of struggle in his life. So let's just go right into it. So basically, what happens is David is this little shepherd boy, right? And he gets anointed as the king of Israel. Well, at the time, there's already a king of Israel. His name is Saul. But he has disobeyed the Lord twice. So God's like, you know what? You don't want to obey me. So I'm not going to give you my anointing anymore. So he takes the anointing away from Saul and gives it to David. Through a prophet named Samuel, who goes to David's house and he tells his dad, his dad Jesse, he tells his dad, God wants me to anoint one of your sons as king. So he brings all his sons in, and he goes down the line from the oldest to the youngest, and David's the youngest, and he's like, hey, this is the guy. So he pours some oil on him, and he's like, hey, you're going to be the next king. So David, they call him a man after God's own heart. So he gets anointed as king, and since he gets anointed as king, the Spirit of God leaves Saul. So Saul is being tormented by these evil spirits. So he asked his servants, hey, I need you guys to find me somebody that can soothe me with music. So this one servant's like, hey, I know this guy named David, and he plays the harp, like, super good, and he's, like, really good with God and everything. So you want me to go get him? And Saul's like, heck yeah, man, go get the guy. So they bring David in, and he plays the harp, and, like, the first note that David plays, Saul, like, feels better. So Saul's like, hey, this guy's good, we're going to hire him. So now, he's doing his job as a harpist, making the king feel good and all this kind of stuff. And then the Philistines start fighting the Israelites. And then, so they're fighting the Israelites, and then they bring in this giant. I'm sure all of you guys know his name. His name is Goliath. And I'm sure all you guys know the story of David and Goliath, but if you don't, I'm going to tell it for real quick. Okay, so what happens is, Israel is fighting the Philistines. Philistines bring in this giant. Everybody's scared of the giant. So David, in the VeggieTales, David brings down pizza to his brothers. But in the Bible, it says cheese and bread. So I'm just going to stick with the pizza because it sounds cooler and yummy. So he brings in the pizza to his brothers. And then he hears this giant talking smack about God. So he's like, hey, he walks up to the king, and he's like, hey, king, this giant, he's talking smack about God in a country, why don't you do something about it? He's like, well, we can't do nothing about it because nobody's tough enough to go fight him. So David's like, well, I'll go do it. And you got to keep in mind, this kid's a little teenage boy, probably like smaller than me. It's saying a lot. And then, so he's like, well, I'll go do it. And Saul's like, no, you can't do that. You're too small. So he's like, well, David's like, oh, yes, I can. So he goes down to the creek bed. He grabs some stones, and he walks out. He walks up Goliath, and he says some smack talk himself. And then he takes a sling, and he slings it, and slings the rock, and it hits Goliath right in between the eyes, and Goliath falls down, and David takes a sword and slices his head off. So everybody likes David because, he just kind of saved Israel. So Saul gives David like a leadership role in the army now because he's like so good with like a sling and stuff. So he works his way up, and then eventually everybody likes David. Everybody under him, everybody above him, all the citizens of Israel and everything, they like David. So Saul gets like super jealous because he knows that David has the anointing of God and everybody likes him. So he's like, well, this guy's going to become king. And he's like, well, I got to stop this. So what's the best way that I can stop this? Oh, let's kill him. So he goes, he tries to do this like deceiving thing where he tries to give David his oldest daughter. And David's like, well, no. Why would I be like worthy enough to be your son-in-law? So Saul was like, okay, fine. So he gave him to somebody else. Well, then his youngest daughter became old enough to get married. So Saul was like, hey, I'll give you my youngest daughter. So David was like, okay. But Saul was like, but there's a price. You got to go kill 200 Philistines. So he was like, okay. So he grabbed up his men, and he went out, and he killed 200 Philistines and came back. He was like, hey, I killed the 200 Philistines. Can I have my wife now? So he's like, yes. And so he gave him his wife. His wife's name is Michal. I don't know how to say it, but that's her name. And but the problem with this situation is that Michal, I don't know how to say her name, she was like infatuated with David before Saul even thought about this scheme that he had. So what his scheme was is his daughters were gonna like manipulate David into falling into Saul's hands. Well, that didn't really work out because she was like so in love with him, she didn't want to hurt him. So David was in the king's little area, right? And he was playing the harp. And Saul had this evil spirit come over him. And Saul picked up a spear and threw it at David to like kill him. So David was like, oh man, what the heck? So he ran off, And then later that day, I guess Saul was like, hey, man, I'm really sorry about, throwing that spear at you. I don't know what happened. So David was like, okay. And then, so there was a few days later, David was doing the same thing. He was playing the harp for the king so he could feel better. And then the evil spirit came over Saul again, and he threw another spear at him to kill him. And David eluded it again. So he's like, all right, man, this is the second time, it just doesn't happen in a coincidence. So he runs back to his house. Now, meantime, Saul, he's like, hey, take some men, and surround his house so when he gets up in the morning and leaves the house, you can kill him. So David gets home, and I guess his wife hears about it. He tells his wife, and his wife's like, hey, look, you need to leave because if you're here in the morning, you're going to die. So David flees, and he goes to Samuel, who's the prophet who anointed him, in Ramah, the city of Ramah. And he goes there, he tells Samuel everything that happened and everything. And then Saul gets word that David went to Ramah to meet Samuel. So Saul's like, all right, so I'll send some men down there. So he sent some men down there to go capture him and kill him. And this weird thing happened when they got there. They came up to this area, and there was a bunch of prophets, they were like filled with the Spirit, and they were prophesying. So these guys were like, well, I guess we'll still go search for him. They went to go try to search for him, and then they got filled with the Spirit and started prophesying. Saul got word that they did that, so he sent more men, and the same thing happened. He sent more men, and the same thing happened. And then he went down there himself, and the same thing happened. He got filled with the Spirit, and he started prophesying. So when Saul sent his men, David found out, so he left. He came back to Jonathan, which was Saul's son, his oldest son, I believe. And they were like best friends. They were like inseparable. And like the Bible even says that Jonathan loved David more than he loved himself. So if that tells you anything. So David comes back and he's like, Jonathan, your dad's trying to kill me. And Jonathan's like, what? No, my dad's not trying to kill you. Everything this guy does, he tells me about it. And David's like, look, man, why would he tell you if we're so close, wouldn't you tell me? He's like, oh, yeah, you're right. So Jonathan was like, well, look, I need proof of this. So what's going to happen is we have this new moon festival in 2 days. So we're going to have this feast, okay, and you're obviously going to be invited. So, and then my dad's going to see that you're not there, and if he gets mad, then he's trying to kill you. But if he does not get mad that you're not there, then you're safe. And then they figure out this way to communicate. The next day, after the feast, David will go hide in this field. Jonathan will shoot some arrows. He'll send the little boy to go get the arrows, and he'll say, beyond you are the arrows, and that means David needs to go now. And then if he says the arrows are beside you, then he's safe. So the feast comes, and David's not there. So Saul's like, hey, Jonathan, where's David at? So Jonathan says, oh, he had this sacrifice that he had to go to in Bethlehem. It's this thing that they do every year, and it's kind of important to him. So he asked if he could, like, not miss the feast. And Saul got, like, super mad. Like, mad enough to throw a spear at his own son to kill him because he, like, deceived his dad. I don't know, it's weird. So Jonathan's like, wow, my dad is really mad. He really wants to kill this guy. So he goes out the next day, and he shoots the arrows, and he tells the little boy, hey, the arrows are beyond you. So David gets up, he says bye to Jonathan, and he takes off. He goes to this city, and he goes to this city, and he goes to this city, and finally he gets to Gath. And in Gath, he's looking for a quiche. But when he gets there, his servants are like, hey, isn't this the guy that's killed like tens of thousands of Philistines? So they take him prisoner. But David's a smart guy, so when he gets captured, he starts acting crazy. Like, he starts, like, slobbering out his mouth and scratching on doors and scratching on walls, scratching on gates and stuff. So the king's like, look, man, this guy's super crazy. He needs to be locked up in, like, some house somewhere, but I ain't keeping him. I ain't keeping him, so you can let him go. In that time, he said this prayer in Psalm 56, if you can put that up for me. And it says, for the director of music, to the tune of blah, blah, blah. Be merciful to me, my God, for my enemies are in hot pursuit all day long. They press their attack. My adversaries pursue me all day long. In their pride, many are attacking me. Next verse. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Next verse. God, whose word I praise, and in God I trust, and I am not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? Next verse. All day long they twist my words. All their schemes are for my ruin. Next verse. They conspire, they lurk, they watch my steps, hoping to take my life. Because of their wickedness, do not let them escape in your anger. God, bring the nations down. Record my misery, list my tears on your scroll. Are they not recorded? That's kind of cool right there. You know, you can, yeah, that one. It's, no, back. 8. There you go. All right, so this is kind of cool because it's like, you know, you think God's so big, you know, and he doesn't really care that much. He really does. When you're going through something really hard, when you're going through like a hard time in life or you're struggling with something, he records your misery. He records all the tears that you shed on that issue. So, like, say you're going through that, like I said earlier, that time of where you're failing this class and you just can't get out of it. And you're crying, like everybody else said. He sees those tears, and he writes them down. Every tear, he writes them down. That's awesome that he cares that much, am I right? So go on. I'm sorry. Then my enemies will turn back when I call for help. By this I will know that God is for me. In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise. In God I trust, and I am not afraid. What can man do to me? I am under vows to you, my God. I will present my thank offering to you. For you have delivered me from death, and my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before God in the light of life. So he says that prayer. And when he says that prayer, he leaves. He goes to this city, and then he hears about the people of Keilah getting attacked by the Philistines. So he asked God, God, should I go to Keilah and save these people from the Philistines? God said, yes, you should. So David goes. He defeats the Philistines, and he saves Keilah. So he's like, hey, man, I might stay here, in Keilah, since, I saved all these people. Hopefully they would be on my side. And God's like, no, you need to leave, because if you don't, they're going to tell Saul that you're here, and then he's going to kill you. So David's like, oh, okay, so I'll leave. So then he said another prayer, Psalm 54. If you could put that up for me. And it says right here, when the Ziphites had gone to Saul and said, is not David hiding among us? So they had already gone and told Saul that he was there. Save me, O God, by your name. Vindicate me by your might. Hear my prayer, O God. Listen to the words of my mouth. Arrogant foes are attacking me. Ruthless people are trying to kill me. People without regard for God. Surely God is my help. The Lord is the one who sustains me. Let evil recoil on those who slander me, and their faithfulness destroy them. I will sacrifice a freewill offering to you. I will praise your name, Lord, for it is good. You have delivered me from all my troubles, and my eyes have looked in triumph on my foes. So, in the beginning of this prayer, he's begging God to save him from these people. But in the end of the prayer, he's already saying that God's delivered him. And in the first prayer, he also was saying, God, these people are attacking me, they're pursuing me, and I'm afraid. And in the end of that prayer, he was saying, but you've already delivered me. This is the way that we should pray when we're in a struggle, when we're going through a hard time. Because God's already won the fight. The fight that you're fighting and you're praying for has already been won by God. So when you're praying and you're crying out to God, Lord, help me. Lord, help me get through this class. Lord, help me get through this breakup. Lord, help me get through this abuse. God's already got it covered. All you got to do is give it to him. All you got to do is give the situation to him. So anyway, he leaves Keilah, and he goes up into the mountains. So Saul is in pursuit of him, obviously, because the people have told him that that David was in that town. So he leaves, and Saul is pursuing him, and Saul's pursuing him, and Saul's closing in on him. And they're in the desert, and it's a mountainous area. So David's on this side of the mountain, and then Saul's on this side of the mountain. And Saul's like getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to David. And then Saul gets word that Israel is being attacked by the Philistines. So he pulls back and goes, pursues the Philistines. So while he goes back and pursues the Philistines, David stays up in the mountains in the stronghold of the mountain. So Saul goes and takes care of the Philistines, and he comes back. Now, the people in the town told Saul, like, hey, look, this is like the exact area that David is staying. We saw him there the other day, and that's just where he's been staying. So Saul's like, all right, thanks. So he goes up in there, and, everybody's got to use the bathroom every now and then. So Saul, even kings, so Saul goes up, and he's in the mountain, and he finds this cave, and he's like, man, I really have to go to the bathroom. So he goes up in this cave, and he starts peeing. And then, this just so happened to be the cave that David and his men were hiding in. They were deep back in the cave. And this must be a pretty big cave, because David had like 400 men with him. So they were like in the back of the cave. And David's men were like, hey, dude, this is your time. God's delivered this guy into your hands. You can kill him right now. This guy has been chasing you down for days, weeks, and you can kill him right now. You can end this. So David walks up there with his knife, or sword, and he walks up there, and he takes it out, and he cuts a piece of his robe off, and then he runs back. So Saul walks out, doesn't even know what happened, he's oblivious, and David walks out of the cave, and he says, Saul, look down at your robe. I cut a piece of it off. I could have killed you. God delivered me into your hand, but I chose not to. Right there, I think that brings up an issue that all of us kind of struggle with, forgiveness. You know how much it would have made sense for him to just kill that guy right there? How many of us, if we had the chance for someone who's ruined our life, done something bad in our life, if we had a chance where they were just right there, oblivious to us being there, would stab him in the back or kill him? Most of us, all of us, I would. But David chose to forgive this guy and leave the vengeance to Jesus. Leave the vengeance to God. Some of us, we just have this thing where we don't forgive people. And it's like, you hate this person and expect them to be affected by it when they've already moved on from what they did. And you're like, it's like drinking poison, thinking it'll kill the other person, but it's killing you. You're putting a wall up between you and God And nothing can happen. God can't do anything for you because of this unforgiveness. If you don't forgive the people that have done wrong in your life, maybe your dad wasn't there all the time. Maybe your parents were abusive. Maybe you had a bad boyfriend. Maybe you had a bad breakup, abusive boyfriend. Maybe you had a bad teacher where you had that 89 and you wanted that 90. She didn't give you the 1 point. And you're mad. You won't forgive her. You're getting bitter over it. It's keeping you from your relationship with God, and it's stopping the progress that you can have in God, because He can't do anything until you forgive that person. He can't forgive you if you don't forgive them. Oh, and forgive yourself, too. We have a very hard time forgiving ourselves for stuff that we've done in the past. We hold it against ourselves, we get bitter about it. God still can't do anything. You got to forgive yourself, too. So, after that point, David, cries because he's like, wow, this guy really could have killed me. So he leaves, and he goes back home. Well, David stays in the mountains for a few more days, and then he retreats down into the desert. But even though David spared Saul's life, Saul still wants to kill David because he still doesn't want him to be king. He wants to be king. Why would he want somebody else to be king, So he hears, somebody tells him that David went down into the desert. So Saul gets his men, his whole army, and takes him down there. 30,000 men, I think. Takes him down there, and they put a camp up in the desert. And, David is up in the hills of this desert, and he's looking down, and he can see this encampment. He can see this huge army sitting there. He's like, wow, these guys are coming to get me, huh? So nightfall comes. They fall asleep. God puts them in this super deep sleep where they won't wake up for nothing. Like a tornado could come through and they wouldn't wake up. So David walks down there, him and this other guy, one of his friends, they walk down there, and they're looking for Saul. And they find Saul, and he's in the center of the encampment. He's dead asleep. And his friend's like, look, man, this is your second chance. God's done it again. He lets you come up on this guy without him knowing, so you can kill him right now. Go ahead and kill him right now. You know what? If you don't want to, I'll do it. Let me kill him. David's like, no, nobody's killing nobody. So Saul had his spear and his water jug right next to his head while he slept. So David picked that up and walked off and walked up the hill, and then he woke the whole camp up and was like, David, I did it again. I had a chance to kill you again, and I didn't. Why do you still chase me? I've done nothing wrong. And Saul, he's like, there's no point in all this, so he goes home. Well, just to show you that God does answer prayers, in 1 Samuel 31, David in Psalm 56 and 54, he's asking God to save him and deliver him from Saul and everybody else that's chasing him, right? So in 1 Samuel 31, sorry. There's not 51 chapters, I apologize. 1 Samuel 31, the Israelites are fighting the Philistines. And the Philistines are putting a beating on the Israelites. So the Philistines, they're fighting, and they kill Saul's son, and they kill another one of Saul's son, and they kill another one of Saul's sons. And then finally, Saul is one of the last people alive in this battle. And he talks to his armor bearer. He's like, hey, take my sword and run at me and kill me so they don't kill me. The armor bearer's like, no, dude, no, I'm not doing that. So Saul takes his own sword and falls on it. He kills himself. So God answered David's prayer. God may not, he may not kill the person that's tormenting your life, the problem that's tormenting your life, but he will deliver you from it, especially if you give that problem, that issue to God, if you give that situation to God. That's the only way that it's going to fix itself. Us as humans, we have this pride. where we think that we can do everything by ourselves, where we can, we can fix everything in our life that is wrong by ourselves. I had this problem. For a couple of years, I've had this like super bad problem with lust. Not a lot of people know this about me, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it. I've had this problem with lust, and it didn't. I kind of got numb to it, because that's what will happen. You keep sinning, you keep sinning, you keep sinning, and you get numb to a sin, and you don't get convicted when you sin. Pastor talked about that this morning, but I had this problem with lust, and I knew I had this problem, but I kept trying to fix it myself. And it wasn't until I left for boot camp and got to tech school. In boot camp, I was reading my Bible every day. I'd sit on the toilet in the bathroom and read the Bible every night. And I got to tech school, and I met this guy, and he brought me under his wing as like a disciple and everything. And finally, God was like, he opened my eyes. He's like, look, you have this super bad problem with lust. So I was like, all right, God, so I have this problem. How do I fix it? How do I fix it? He's like, well, you're not going to fix it. I will. So I had to learn to give my problem with lust up to God. And eventually, he delivered me from it. He's not going to do it in a night. It's a process. It's a process. And even with situations like I was saying with the class, or you got, your parents, you don't have the best parents, or, your dad wasn't always there, or anything like that, God's sitting there, he's like, you can't fix this yourself. Just give it to me. I will fix it for you. I've already won the battle. You're fighting a battle that you can't win because I've already won it. So, Ashley, if you'll come up. I know all of us, I was going to speak on worship tonight, and literally God changed this message for me, and he was like, you know what, no. There's people that are coming to this message, and they need to hear this word. So, I know a lot of us, we've struggled with things in the past. We haven't given them to God, so we're struggling with them still for several years, several months, decades. And some of us, we're in situations now that we've been in for, a few weeks, but it's still tormenting us. There's things that are taken away from our relationship with God that could really help us move forward in God. So if you guys would stand up for me and bow your heads and close your eyes and everything. So how many of you, it's just me and you and God, how many of you guys are going through something rough right now, something tough, something that's tormenting you? A pretty good bit of people. God, he wants to deliver you from that. Like I said earlier, he records your lament. He records every tear that you shed. He cares. God cares. You may think that nobody cares about your problem, but God does. He cares enough to record it in a scroll just for you. God's down here at this altar with open arms, saying, come to me. Come on. Bring me your sorrow. Bring me your pain. Bring me your struggles. I'll take them. Put them at my feet. I will take care of them. So those of you that raised your hands and that didn't raise your hands, I'm going to count to 3. And if y'all would come up to this altar and just give your struggles to God. 1, 2,